Okay, the cornerstone piece of this all is Anthony Edwards. I'm going to start by saying this. One of the most fun players in the NBA, and on any given night, the single most fun player. He had some incredible quotes. He's one of the best quotes in the NBA. I love his personality. I love his approach. He seems like this is going to sound weird because I'm not just talking about a guy as a personality. I think it actually impacts him as a player. He seems very authentic. And in the game, he can criticize, or in a post game, he can criticize himself. He can say, he just seems so authentic and honest. And to me, I think that honesty is an important trait for a player because it makes me think they're honest with themselves. And I just love Anthony Edwards. He's on my short list of players that when they're on, I'm enjoying myself. Where does he fall for you in that category?
Yeah, he's getting there to be must-watch TV for me now. And I think that this, looking at some numbers this morning, this is incredible that we see guys improve their scoring average early in their career, year after year. But the leaps that he's taken in that, first of all, 18 to 21 to 24 to 28, he's not just incrementally increasing it year by year. He's taking huge bites, right? But it's more than that, Adam. He has improved every year in field goal percentage, in three-point percentage, his rebounding numbers, his assist numbers. Each year, every category is inched up. You just don't see that. You might see a guy make that jump in scoring, but maybe he flattens out a little bit of rebounding. Maybe one year, he took a dip. He's improved in every category across the board. But here is the biggest reason I am buying in on Anthony Edwards. And it refresh my memory because I'm sure you were sitting there or you were watching this game and covering it. When they played Denver in the playoffs a year ago, Anthony Edwards, if I recall, missed a game-tying or game-winning shot in one of those games, correct?
Correct.
I don't remember which game it was.
Might have been
his reaction afterwards of basically taking his jersey, running full speed off the court, pulled his jersey off his head, ran off the court into the locker room, left the floor, right? You say, well, okay, what's the big deal about that? Told me something about him. He was devastated to lose, to not come through in that moment. And the one thing I see about him every time I watch him, he's got a look in his eye that he's obsessed with being great. And that's the one component that it's so hard to gauge until you get enough of a body of work and you watch a guy. He is a guy that absolutely hates to lose. He hates to be any guy on the court that's not the center of attention. But when the game's over, if you're talking about somebody else first, Anthony Edwards is ticked off by that. It bothers him. He wants to be the best player on the floor every night. He hates to lose. And I think that, along with these incredible physical tools that he has, that is why I think that Anthony Edwards, his ascension as a superstar in this league has begun. He's not there yet. You got to have some postseason success to do that, but he's on his way to getting into that category. If Minnesota has the kind of year we just talked about, he's going to get his opportunities this season to have those moments.
I love that you started with this, Legs, because this show, we do a lot of X's and O's breakdown. We're breaking down basketball, but I love that you started here with this sort of trait, this personality trait, because to me, it was on my list too. When I was breaking down, okay, strengths and weaknesses, my first strength is he's a super competitor. And that's such an underrated and underappreciated thing. And Jokic has a great quote. Nikola Jokic has this great quote where he says something like, Serbians don't love basketball. We love competition, or we love winning, something like that. And then basketball is just our avenue to doing that. I feel like Anthony Edwards is the same way. We know he was a great football player. We know he loved talked about playing baseball and all these different things. I feel like he was one of those guys that excelled at basketball and grew. And it's like, that's my sport. But it didn't matter what the competition was. He just wanted to compete, and he wants to do this and that. And after the game, I love this. Here's a quote. This comes from John Krasinski's article at The Athletic, really good article recapping the game, where he says of Jason Tatum, because the end of that game last night, there was a little mano-y-mano, like, okay, who's going to carry their team? Tatum or Edwards. And he says, he, meaning Tatum, he got the stop on me at that end, at the end of regulation. And he says, he was talking smack at the jump ball in overtime. And I told him, F it, I'm coming again. And then he says later in the game, at the end of the game, he called me up for an ISO and he tried to ISO me. And I'm like, hey, I play defense. I just have 5 fouls. You know what I'm saying? So I had to show him I could play defense. This is what I mean.
Yeah.
The competition rises, and that's what gets him going. He was phenomenal in those moments.
And now, in addition to the want to, which is the main quality you have to have, he's got that clearly. Now it is, do you develop and possess the skill set, and how do you polish that up? So he's got a couple things that I think now will be the next level, because he's already added the ability to shoot at pretty much from any distance off the dribble at the three-point line, and he's a legitimate threat from there, and he hit a couple big ones last night. He's also got this herky-jerky thing but it's more in like one direction or the other, where he'll go kind of start to slow down and then accelerate, get a little bump, and shoot a fadeaway or a pull-up jumper. He had a couple three-point plays last night where he went off the glass after he stopped and let a guy run into him. So he's got that start-stop. Now the next level, and this is what Tatum has done and added. Tatum did not have the handle when he came into the league that he does now. He now has such command of the basketball. He always has a counter to great defense. If a guy slides, cuts him off, cuts off a drive, cuts off a spin, cuts off a crossover, Jason Tatum doesn't now pick the ball up or settle for a fadeaway jumper in that moment. He now will separate, get you squared up again, and go to the next move. And that is when you now become almost unguardable offensively. It's really about you missing a shot than that person affecting you. That's Anthony Edwards' next challenge, because he still doesn't have that level of handle. It's usually one direction or the other. It's not going to be anything where there's going to be multiple counters if that's what it takes on a given possession. That's big. And then I talked about the patience factor, just not necessarily in that moment of adrenaline shooting that deep three, like out of the backcourt, like he did last night at a key moment, right? Because he's feeling it to such an extent. You just bailed out the defense in a big way by settling for that shot. So patience and then mastering an additional counter with your handle. Those are the next two things, I think, for Anthony Edwards.
So I want to. The patience thing is really interesting, and the shot making too, because at the end of the game, he took some of the shots he made, and I think he made like 4 or 5 in a row in overtime. It was unbelievable how that some of the shots he made, but it was also unbelievable some of the ones he took, because if he misses those, you go, okay, what was that? But I'm kind of a believer, Legs, and I'm curious what you think of this. I'm a believer in players need to feel the emotion of the game, and some of those like shots that you take that are bad shots. You need to have control. You need to have mastery over your emotions in those tight moments. But at the same time, you do need to feel the emotion of that game. And I feel like he's one of those guys that feels those things. And that's part of why he's such a great clutch player, is that intensity rises and he just rides that wavelength. And when you mentioned the ball handling, this is where I wanted to go, because I think it's an interesting one. I think his other superpower, in addition to being a great competitor, is he has some of the best body control of anybody in the NBA. I think we talked about body control last week. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. I can't remember. But the way he moves his body left, right, he can put combinations of moves together that you can watch and say, I know he didn't practice that. He practiced each one individually, and then his body reacted just naturally and was able to kind of make a move on the fly and improvise. And when you say ball handling, that's a skill. There's some things that he has to work on. If you put 2 players side by side and gave them 1,000 reps of the same drill, one player is going to be better at the end of that exercise than the other. To me, he's in the top percentile of players because of his body control. I just feel like he picks up on skills really, really quickly because he has such control over the movements of his body. So you're right about the ball handling. I just think that's going to be a thing that he solves here in the coming years to the level Tatum has.
Well, look, guys that are sort of built like Anthony Edwards and have that kind of athletic ability. And early on when he got to the league, the main reason he was making highlights is because he was absolutely destroying somebody at the rim, right? Going up over the top of them. Guys like that typically don't get to a place their 4th year in the league where they're shooting 50% from the field. It just doesn't happen. So his shot selection has clearly improved, and there's still a margin where we're agreeing it can get better also. And not rely on that kill shot, right, in that moment. Yeah. Understanding you can get something better for yourself. The body control is a great one. Also, another element to that is he's got this uncanny ability to drive, jump against a bigger defender at the rim, hit him shoulder into their chest, and then he can move the basketball while he hangs in the air an extra nanosecond, right? Everybody else is starting to come down. He's still in the air to be able to get the ball clear and release it as the defender's going down and get something up on the glass. It talks about his strength, his body control. Now, another area that I think is going to be something interesting to watch, because some of these great players in the league have added this, and their ability to beat you with a pass when they've put their head down and gone to the rim hard. Right now, when Anthony Edwards does that, he's probably going to shoot that most of the time. And I'm not talking about necessarily, mid-range jumper. Like he's got an angle, he's turned the corner, he's got a gap, he's going to the rim. Now, hell or high water, that ball's going to get up on the glass. And now it's, well, let's see, once he's committed in the air, can he make that kick out pass to the right corner for a three? Can he throw a lob off the move to Gobert or somebody on the roll, right? Naz Reid. Can he throw a pocket pass in that moment to the guy on the baseline that's sliding up? So his ability as a playmaker has improved. There's another level there. And look, we're not nitpicking. What we're doing is challenging a guy that has a chance to be a superstar to go add that 10% in these areas, because that's what we're talking about. He's got so much already. There's a refinement. And now you become this weapon that there's no answer for once you can put all of that together. So we're not nitpicking. We're just talking about areas that a great player can continue to ascend. And that's what this is for Anthony Edwards.
We can compare him in this way to Jason Tatum, because I think Jason Tatum is a few years ahead of him in that development, just all the micro skills that come to offense. But I think even Tatum has a decent amount more to climb in the thing you're talking about right now. How do all the pieces on the court fit together, and what are my reads? You have the talent, but now to fully unlock that, you have to read the team game. And I feel Tatum is still working on that thing as well. So in your opinion, how do young players work on that specific skill, given all the other responsibilities they have?
Yeah, well, a lot of that part of it comes down to being somebody that's a voracious film studier. I mean, that's where you see those opportunities. And the more you study it, the more those opportunities present themselves in games, you find yourself naturally now looking in a place that you weren't before. An awareness is there. And that's something that I think Jason Tatum can improve on as well. And one of the things about Boston that's interesting, as long as we're talking about Tatum, I've always said this about he and Jaylen Brown. As great as those guys are, and as tough as they can be on a given night, I also feel like everything they do operates independently of each other, right? There are great combinations in this league of players, but a lot of it comes down to how, like, for instance, Jokic and Murray, two guys you get to watch all the time. Now, granted, one's a big, one's a guard. I get that. But Jokic spends so much time on the perimeter. I mean, he plays a lot of nights guard the same, or occupies the same areas that the guard does. So much of what they do is interconnected. So much of what Tatum and Brown do is just independent of each other on a given possession, it feels like. Right. And as great as they are, and as a load that they are to handle, and they're great, great players, I haven't seen that gap get closed there, where it's more of the two of them putting immense pressure on teams because they're operating together at the same time. And that's that next level we're talking about as well, and being able to beat teams even when it's not your night necessarily as a scorer. And that's always the challenge for young, great players. Like, can you find another way on a night when you just can't make a shot? How now are you beating teams with your rebounding, your defense, and then your playmaking on the other end?
We're in the era of these player development coaches, these private workout guys who are working with, footwork and complex moves. And sometimes I see the moves guys are practicing in the offseason and I always think, you might use that 5 times this year. 7, 6 crossover, sidestep, whatever. Basketball is a game of one-on-one. You got to beat your guy, in different movements or what have you. It's a game of 2-on-2. You've got pick and rolls and you post entries and off. It's a game of 3-on-3 because a lot of actions involve 3 players in some concert. And then it's 5-on-5, meaning oftentimes the 5-on-5 game has 2 spacers and there's 3 pieces working, or 3 spacers and 2 pieces working. But it's the relationship of all those pieces that I feel like is behind the individual part of this. And I always wonder if there's a market inefficiency out there for player development, trainers who are working on that aspect of it. Hey, we're good with our footwork. We're good on the sidestep, the step back. We're good. Let's now work on what happens in this 3-man action. What happens in this 2-man action? What happens with this rotation versus that rotation? And that's the stuff you're talking about, I think, with both Tatum and with Anthony Edwards. And I don't know how you predict how good a guy will become at that, because I don't know what it takes to be good at that. I think guys just figure it out through reps and pattern recognition.
Yeah, I mean, some guys it's innate and they're born with it. You know, you watch a guy. The
Yeah.
first time I saw LeBron James play a high school game, and he was obviously, the biggest, strongest freak athlete on the court, and none of that stood out to me. What stood out to me was some of these passes he was making to far inferior players on his own team, because of his ability to understand what was about to happen. So some of it can be innate with certain guys. Other guys, it's always a work in progress to learn. And like I said, I think the number one way you work on that is to just constantly be looking at yourself on film and
Mm,
looking at opportunities. And I think the great players in this league do that because
yeah.
they understand the responsibility they have is not just for themselves to go get their 30 and they
Yeah.
did their part. There's so much more on the plate of the true superstar. And I think Anthony Edwards is like I said, he's not there yet because I think to call a player a superstar, I think you have to have some postseason success, right? And prove that you can elevate your teams in those kind of pressure environments against the best competition. And then you could start to throw that word around. I don't take that word lightly. I think he is on his way there. The team's success now will determine how quickly he gets there.
What else for him do you see in his game that maybe is an area you want to see? I mean, I think the reading the court part is good. The handle very clearly. Is there another skill or thing that's deficient?
It gets back to for me, the patience thing. I
Yeah.
think he gets so hopped up on adrenaline in certain moments, that he's just going to come down and look for any daylight. That just comes with time. He's a very young player. Here's one area he has really dramatically improved. His early in his rookie year, I was doing some breakdown on him because, he was such an eye popper athletically. You wanted to take a look at this guy. And he had really bad habits defensively with watching the ball on the weak side of the floor. And part of that's because he'd probably never really been asked to do it, right? No one made him accountable to do it as he was playing his high school basketball and AAU elite team. And then his 1 year in college when he was putting up numbers at Georgia. No one's really asking him to do those things and improve and making him accountable for it. So he would get beat on a face cut when he's staring at the ball on the weak
Right.
side of the floor. He'd leak out on a play that should have been his defensive rebound, right? And somebody gets a putback. Things like that, swiping and picking up a cheap foul rather than taking that extra half second to slide your feet and draw the contact. He's gotten so much better in that area. And the reason is back to the very first point we made when you brought his name up. The guy is obsessed with being great. It's obvious. He has a look in his eye of constant dissatisfaction with what's going on. He wants more. You cannot teach it. You can only hope that your best players get it, because if they have it, you've got a real chance to do some special things in this league from a team standpoint if your best player wants to be great. And we have some guys in this league right now. Tatum's like that. I think Giannis Antetokounmpo is the guy that pops off, right? It's somebody that's just obsessed with that. I think Anthony Edwards has a lot of that in him.